My name is Leo Morgan and I'm 71 years old. At my daughter's wedding, my future son-in-law shoved my face into a $7,000 cake in front of 300 guests and called me a beggar. What he didn't know was that I owned the building we were standing in. Before I tell you how I settled that debt, remember, respect is earned, not bought. The azure ballroom glittered like gilded air. I stood in a corner in my old but well-pressed suit, a ghost at a party I had paid for but no longer belonged to. My daughter Chloe looked like a vision in white, though her smile was fragile glass. Her fiancé, Preston Vanderbilt, moved through the room like a shark, all teeth and tailored perfection. Every time his eyes landed on me, it was the look you give something you've stepped in. When I gave my toast, I kept it simple. A father's love, nothing more. The applause was warm. Then Preston took the microphone, clapping slowly, mockingly. "Well said, Pops. Now let's get to the fun part." The fun part was the cake. He turned to me, not Chloe, smirking. "You look like you could use a good meal." His hand shot into my hair, driving my face into 7 tiers of frosting. His friends roared with laughter. He yanked my head back and whispered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear, "Try some dessert, beggar." Chloe stood frozen, horrified, but silent. Then a voice cut through the laughter like a blade. Henry Harrison, one of the most powerful developers in the city, a man Preston had spent months trying to impress, was on his feet. "That beggar is Leo Morgan," he thundered. "He founded Morgan Construction. He doesn't just own a few buildings, you fool. He owns half this city, including the ground you're standing on." Preston's face drained white, and in that instant, I need to tell you how we got here. There was a time the name Morgan meant skyscrapers and steel. I built an empire with nothing but 2 hands and a mind that never stopped calculating. I had it all, until cancer took my wife Isabella, piece by piece. In the silence she left behind, I understood that every tower I'd built, every dollar I'd earned, meant nothing without her. So I sold it all, the mansion, the cars, the trophies of a life that no longer felt like mine. I kept only Morgan Construction, handed to a trusted board, and retreated to the small timber lake house I'd built for Isabella with my own hands. I let the world believe I'd failed. Great wealth attracts the worst kind of people, and I wanted to see who truly loved my daughter without it. It was a test, naive, maybe even cruel in hindsight, but it was born from a father's fear. At first, Chloe still loved the simple life. She loved the old truck, said it smelled like home. But once Preston entered her world, that changed. "Dad, some of my friends were asking why you don't get a more respectable car," she said one Sunday. The word respectable cut deep. It was the first crack. Then came the money. Small requests at first. 200 here, a work dress there. Soon it was 5,000 for an opportunity in Aspen, 10,000 for a car because her old Honda was humiliating. Every transfer felt like watching a piece of my daughter disappear. Preston, meanwhile, treated me like furniture, mocking my jazz records, my old clothes, lecturing me on stocks as if I were a child. He wasn't courting my approval, he was making it irrelevant. Months before the wedding, Preston and his mother Diana summoned me to their private club. They slid across a leather binder, a $500,000 wedding plan, salmon flown from Scotland, a string quartet from Vienna. When I offered instead to host the wedding at the Grand Majestic, the historic hotel my company had restored, my gift, fully paid, no strings, Diana laughed. "Quaint," she said. "A lovely little passion project." Preston slid across an invoice instead. 40,000 for flowers, 25,000 for lighting, 30,000 for champagne. They didn't want a father-in-law. They wanted a sponsor. Weeks later, a courier delivered a prenuptial agreement to my house, addressed to Chloe. Buried in the legal language was the real intent. Preston would be entitled to half of any inheritance or windfall Chloe received after my death. He wasn't marrying my daughter. He was pre-claiming my grave. When I called to warn her, she recited his words back to me like scripture. "Preston said you'd try to control me with your money." She hung up on me. Then came the final invasion. Preston and Chloe walking through my home like inspectors, tapping the stone fireplace I'd built with Isabella, planning to tear it out for clean white marble. My study, filled with a lifetime of books, would become a gym. And then the real proposal. They'd move in after the wedding to help me out, while arranging a spot for me at Golden Meadows, a retirement community with a golf course. They wanted my house gutted, my life erased, and me shipped off quietly to wait for the end. At the rehearsal dinner, Preston delivered the final blow. A toast built entirely on a lie. Weeks earlier, his car had broken down on a country road, and I'd driven out to change his tire myself while he stood by, careful not to dirty his hands. Now he stood in front of everyone and rewrote it. An old man fumbling with tools, turning a wrench the wrong way, nearly dropping his $200,000 car. The room roared with laughter. Then he turned it into a gift, Golden Meadows, arranged and paid for, presented as an act of love. His parents beamed with pride. The guests applauded his generosity. I watched my daughter clap along, eyes down, refusing to meet mine. Her silence was her signature on my eviction notice. Something inside me went cold and still. The grieving father died at that table. In his place stood the architect, the man who had built an empire and knew exactly what a structure looks like right before it collapses. That night, I sat alone in my study, the room they'd already marked for demolition. I picked up the old landline and called my lawyer of 30 years, Evelyn Reed. "Activate the Sunset Protocol," I told her. No hesitation. "Understood, Leo," she said. "I'll set the wheels in motion." The Sunset Protocol wasn't dramatic, just a plan I'd built after Isabella died, when I saw what greed does to families. My personal wealth, on paper, was nearly nothing. Everything, the company, the real estate, every asset, had been folded into the Isabella Morgan Legacy Trust years earlier. My simple life wasn't poverty. It was a filter, designed to reveal exactly who loved me, and who saw only a fortune waiting to be inherited. Preston hadn't just failed that test. He'd set it on fire. Then I called Henry Harrison, a friend of 40 years. I told him everything. The money, the prenup, the plan to gut my house and ship me off. When I finished, he didn't offer sympathy. He offered fury. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "I need you at the wedding," I said. "Sitting, watching. And when you see the signal, I need you to stand up and detonate the truth." Which brings us back to the ballroom, frosting still dripping down my face. 300 stunned guests staring at Preston as his lie unraveled in real time. I didn't rush. I pulled out one of Isabella's old monogrammed handkerchiefs and calmly wiped the cake from my face. Eyebrows, lips, every inch, while the room watched in silence. The stooped old man was gone. What stood in his place was the man who'd faced down union bosses and corrupt officials for 40 years and never lost. "He's lying!" Preston shrieked, pointing at Henry, then at me. "He's a broke old fool who lives in a shack. Tell them, Chloe." But Chloe only sobbed into her hands. Then the doors opened, and Evelyn Reed walked in, calm, sharp, unstoppable, a leather portfolio under her arm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Good evening. I am legal counsel for Mr. Leo Morgan," she said, and the projector screen behind the cake flickered from a slideshow of the happy couple to a deed of ownership. "This ballroom, along with every dollar spent on tonight's event, belongs to Isabella Holdings LLC, a subsidiary of the Isabella Morgan Legacy Trust. Mr. Morgan funded this entire wedding himself to see exactly what kind of event you'd plan, given an unlimited budget. The results, I must say, exceeded our expectations." The screen changed again, a financial breakdown of the Vanderbilt family. $27 million in debt, mortgaged properties, frozen credit lines. Diana let out a strangled cry. "You are not old money, Mr. Vanderbilt," Evelyn said. "You are the last withered branch of it, drowning in debt. This wedding wasn't a celebration, it was a bailout, and you were betting on my client's death to fund it." Finally, the prenuptial agreement appeared on screen, stamped void in red. "Under state law, this contract is unenforceable, signed under fraudulent misrepresentation of your finances," Evelyn said. "But more simply, it's worthless, because the asset you targeted doesn't exist. Mr. Morgan's home was placed in trust a decade ago. Upon his death, it goes to the Children's Hospital. There is no inheritance. The vault you tried to crack has been empty all along." Diana collapsed sideways in her chair, a cascade of pearls. Her husband folded into himself silently. Preston sank to his knees, his dream of salvation turning to ash. I walked to my daughter, my voice quiet now, stripped of the warmth it once held. This man never loved you, Chloe. He loved the illusion of wealth he thought you represented. The choice of what happens now is yours, but my name, my legacy, and my support will not be part of a life built on his values. If you ever find your way back to who you were raised to be, you know where I live, but the door only opens for the daughter I remember. I turned to Evelyn. Give every waiter, valet, and musician here tonight double their pay. Send the rest of the wedding budget to the Isabella Morgan Memorial Fund at the Children's Hospital by morning. A night built on greed would fund a year of compassion instead. I walked out without looking back. Henry fell into step beside me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Leo," he said, "that was more satisfying than any hostile takeover I've ever run." I allowed myself a small, tired smile. Months have passed. I sit on my porch each morning now, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise turn the lake to gold. The house is quiet, but it's my quiet. A few weeks ago, the back door creaked open, and Chloe stepped out, thinner, humbled, the entitlement gone from her eyes, replaced by something fragile and real. Our story isn't over, but if we build again, it will be built on truth this time, on my terms. I spent my whole life believing patience was the highest form of love. I've learned since that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let the truth collapse a lie, even if it means watching someone you love fall with it. Wealth was never the measure of my worth. Integrity was, and I would rather live simply with my dignity intact than watch my family's soul get sold off, piece by piece, to people who mistake a legacy for a lottery ticket. Tell me, when is it time to stop being patient and start fighting back?